Hello, everybody. This is Brenda, Anaya, and Natalia Cornejo presenting primary ovarian insufficiency for the class of Anatomy and Physiology with Professor Cal.
Hello everyone, today I'll be introducing you to primary ovarian insufficiency, also known as POI. POI is a condition where a woman's ovaries stop functioning properly before the age of 40. While it's normal for fertility to decline around 40 as women approach menopause, those with POI start experiencing irregular periods and decreased fertility much earlier, sometimes even during their teenage years. It's important to understand that POI is not the same as premature menopause. In premature menopause, menstruation stops completely before the age of 40 and pregnancy is no longer possible. This can be caused by things such as surgery, certain medical treatments, or underlying health conditions. In contrast, women with POI might still have occasional periods and in some cases can still become pregnant. Often, the cause of POI isn't known. The prevalence of POI. Based on a review of studies from 1946 to 2021, the global prevalence of POI is about 3.5% among women. When looking at different causes, women with iatrogenic POI, and iatrogenic just means it's caused by medical treatments such as chemotherapy or surgery, had the highest rate at 11.2. Those with autoimmune related causes followed at 10.5. In terms of regions, North America showed the highest prevalence at 11.3%, followed by South America at 5.4%. POI also found to be more common in developing countries with a rate of 5.3% compared to 3.1% in developed countries. Although the overall trend over the past 20 years shows an increase in POI cases, the change wasn't statistically significant. These percentages and data highlights how important it is to raise awareness and education around POI, especially in areas with higher rates or limited access to healthcare.
Next, we're going to talk about the risk factors that come with primary ovarian insufficiency. Some people have a greater likelihood of developing primary ovarian insufficiency based on their background, medical history, or previous treatment. Age is one important factor. While POI can occur in young women, it becomes more common in women over the age of 35. Family history also increases risk. Women who have a biological mother or sister with POI are more likely to develop the conditions themselves. Autoimmune disorders and genetic conditions such as Turner syndrome or fragile premutation can interfere with normal ovarian function and increase the risk for early ovarian failure. Finally, pelvic surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation treatments, especially if they affect the reproductive organs, can damage the ovaries and lead to premature loss of function. In Figure 1, these causes are highlighted along the left side, like genetic, autoimmune diseases, and chemotherapy, which contribute to early ovarian dysfunction shown in the center image. These are complications that result from primary ovarian insufficiency but can potentially be treated or managed with the right care. Bone loss. Estrogen plays a critical role in keeping bones strong by inhibiting osteoclast activity. When estrogen levels drop in POI, bone reabsorption increases, leading to lower bone density and higher fracture risk. This is shown in the figure as bone disease. Cardiovascular disease. Estrogen helps regulate lipid metabolism and keeps blood vessels flexible. Its loss can cause increased LDL cholesterol and arterial stiffness, putting women at higher risk for heart disease. Cognitive and emotional challenges. Estrogen influences mood-related neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. Low levels can contribute to anxiety, depression, and cognitive changes like memory issues. These are referenced in the figures under cognitive/emotional health. Sexual dysfunction. Without enough estrogen, vaginal tissues can become dry and thin, leading to discomfort during intercourse and decrease in libido. Metabolic issues. Estrogen also affects how the body processes fat and sugar. Its absence can lead to insulin resistance, weight gain, and increased risk for metabolic syndrome. Infertility. Follicles depletion and dysfunctions are shown in the diagram, meaning the ovaries no longer release eggs reliably, making natural conception very difficult. These are complications of primary ovarian insufficiency that reflect the underlying damage of the body system and can't be reversed, but understanding them helps in managing symptoms. Autoimmune disorders. POI is often linked with autoimmune disorders like Hashimoto's thyroids or Addison's disease. In these cases, the immune system mistakenly targets the ovaries, disrupting hormonal signaling and leading to follicle damage. Early onset menopause symptoms. Because estrogen drops prematurely in POI, women experience menopause symptoms earlier than expected, like hot flashes, night sweats, and irregular periods. These reflect dysfunctions in the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, which normally controls the reproductive hormones.
So now let's take a look at the internal anatomy of the female reproductive system. This system includes several key structures that work together to support the process like ovulation, fertilization, and pregnancy. Starting on each side, we have the ovary located on each side of the uterus. The ovary has two main parts, the cortex, which contains developing follicles and eggs, and the medulla, which houses blood vessels and connective tissues. Each month, an egg matures in the cortex and is released during ovulation. The egg is then picked up by the fimbriae, which are like finger-like projections at the end of the fallopian tube. The fallopian tube has several regions, the infundibulum, the ampulla, where the fertilization usually occurs, and the isthmus, which connects to the uterus. The part that passes through the uterine wall is called the intramural section. At the center is the uterus, a muscular pear-shaped organ. The top part is the fundus, the middle section is the body, and the lower portion is the cervix, which connects to the vagina. The uterus has three layers, the endometrium, which thickens each period in preparation for a fertilized egg, the myometrium, the muscular middle layer, and the perimetrium, which isn't shown here but forms the outer covering. The vagina extends from the cervix to the outside of the body. It serves as a birth canal and the exit for menstruation. Surrounding and supporting these structures are several ligaments. The broad ligament helps hold the uterus in place. It's divided into sections. The mesovarium supports the ovaries, the mesosalpinx holds the fallopian tubes, and the mesometrium supports the uterus. The suspensory ligament carries blood vessels to the ovaries, and the ovarian ligament connects to the ovaries to the uterus. The round ligament helps keep the uterus tilted forward, and the uterosacral ligament anchors it to the sacrum in the back. Together, these organs and supportive structures play key roles in hormone production, egg transport, implantation, and childbirth. And now we're going to be getting into the anatomical changes of POI. So, primary ovarian insufficiency, we already know that occurs when a normal ovarian function stops before the age of 40, and this is directly linked to the structural changes in the ovary. Healthy ovaries can contain many follicles at different stages, which are responsible for egg development and hormone production. But in POI, the ovaries are smaller and have far few follicles. If we look at a histology slide of POI versus a healthy ovary, we can see that there's a clear loss of developing follicles, and those remaining often look abnormal, or they look like they're degenerating. Granulosa cells, which support the follicles, may also be impaired, possibly due to inflammation. Fibrosis may also appear in the ovarian stroma, which makes the environment less supportive. So there's a lot of research done in autoimmune cases. Immune cells may invade the tissue and worsen the damage, but overall POI is marked by reduced ovarian size and sharp decline in function follicles, leading to early loss of fertility and hormone production. Now I'm going to be explaining the differences between normal reproductive physiology and what happens in POI. Let's begin with normal physiology. In a healthy reproductive system, the ovaries have a couple main roles. They produce estrogen and progesterone, release mature eggs, and regulate the menstrual cycle. This is all controlled by the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, or HPO axis. The hypothalamus sends out GnRH, which tells the pituitary gland to release two key hormones, FSH and LH. FSH helps grow ovarian follicles, which contains the eggs. LH triggers ovulation, which is the release of a mature egg, and helps produce progesterone. As these follicles grow, they produce estrogen, which thickens the uterine lining in preparation for a possible pregnancy. After ovulation, progesterone helps mature that lining further. If no fertilization occurs, hormone levels decrease and menstruation begins. The entire system is regulated by feedback loops. Estrogen and progesterone tell the brain when to increase and decrease hormone production. But what would happen in POI? In POI, this normal process breaks down. The ovaries either run out of follicles early or the existing follicles stop responding to FSH and LH, which means there's less estrogen and progesterone being made. With fewer hormones, the uterine lining doesn't build up properly, ovulation might happen, and the periods become irregular or completely stop. Since estrogen levels are low, the feedback loop is disrupted. The pituitary keeps sending out more FSH in an effort to stimulate the ovaries. That's why women in POI often have high levels of FSH. Also, because ovulation is rare or absent, fertility is affected, and women may experience symptoms of early menopause. These symptoms can include hot flashes, night sweats, mood changes, vaginal dryness, and over time, the lack of estrogen is a risk for other health complications such as osteoporosis, heart disease. And in summary, in normal physiology, the HPO axis runs smoothly, hormones are balanced, and follicles grow, ovulation occurs, and the cycle repeats. But in POI, the balance is lost, and the ovaries don't respond, the hormone levels drop, and the menstruation cycle becomes irregular, and fertility declines.
We are now moving on to mechanism of disease. In a healthy reproductive system, the ovaries contain follicles that mature in response to follicle-stimulating hormones. These follicles produce estrogen, which supports ovulation, maintains the uterine lining, and regulates various symptoms in the body. In primary ovarian insufficiency, this process is disrupted far earlier than normal. In individuals with POI, one of the most noticeable physical effects is the presence of shrunken ovaries. These ovaries have little to no follicular development, which makes it unlikely for viable eggs to mature or be released. As a result, ovulation becomes irregular or completely stops, and fertility is significantly impaired. If we look at Figure 1, we can follow a clear breakdown of how this disruption occurs. The mechanism begins with mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress, which damages the oocytes within the ovaries, leading to early follicle loss. As follicles decline, the body experiences hormonal shifts. The pituitary gland increases FSH production in an attempt to stimulate the ovaries, but the ovaries no longer respond. At the same time, estrogen and estradiol levels fall. Also shown in the figure is the disruption of the vaginal microbiota, the community of bacteria that helps protect the reproductive tract. This imbalance activates the immune system, triggering the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines such as TNF-A, IL-6, and IL-1B. These molecules worsen ovarian damage by interfering with hormone signaling. As the damage builds, both oocytes and granulosa cells, which support egg development, undergo apoptosis. This process is labeled in the top right of the diagram as apoptosis of oocytes and granulosa cells. This leads to follicular atresia, where follicles shrink and disappear before maturing. Eventually, this results in primary follicle depletion, shown in the center of the diagram. Within enough follicles, ovulation stops entirely and hormone production fails, as shown in the blue box labeled gonadotropins. FSH levels rise, but estrogen and estradiol stay low, which cause a wide range of symptoms and long-term health issues. In the lower part of the figure, we'll see the result of estrogen loss. Menopausal symptoms begin to appear, along with bone disease and infertility and metabolic and cardiovascular conditions. This highlights how estrogen supports not just the reproductive function, but also bone strength, heart health, and brain function. Moving on to conditions. Some individuals have a genetic predisposition to POI, including chromosome abnormalities like Turner syndrome or translocations that disrupt key genes. Telomere shortening, which reduces the lifespan of ovarian cells, is another contributing factor. Environmental exposures such as smoking, alcohol, and chemical exposures can damage ovarian cells and blood supply. Excessive weight loss can disrupt hormonal signaling and speed up follicular atresia. Immune system disorders such as plays a significant role as well. Conditions like hypothyroidism, adrenal insufficiency, and autoimmune polyglandular syndrome causes the body to mistakenly attack ovarian tissues. Addison's disease, for example, primarily affects adrenal glands, but often coexists with ovarian autoimmunity, leading to further damage. This autoimmune destruction, as shown in the figure, activates inflammatory pathways that worsen ovarian failure. Finally, medical interventions like pelvic surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation therapy are known to directly harm ovarian tissues. These treatments target rapidly dividing cells, including oocytes, leading to permanent loss of ovarian function. Moving on to the symptoms. One of the earliest signs of POI is irregular or missed periods. This happens because ovaries stop responding to FSH from the pituitary glands, disrupting the menstrual cycle. Infertility stops due to the lack of viable follicles and ovulation. Low estrogen levels also lead to vaginal dryness, decreased sex drive, and night sweats. Estrogen usually maintains vaginal tissues and helps regulate body temperature, so its loss causes discomfort and erratic heat responses such as hot flashes. You may also experience trouble concentrating, mood swings, and irritability, since estrogens help regulate neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which are essential for mood and cognitive clarity. Dry eyes are another effect of low estrogens, as tear production and mucomembrane support decline. These symptoms reflect how deeply estrogen supports various symptoms in the body. But POI isn't just short-term symptoms. It comes with serious long-term health effects. Osteoporosis can develop because estrogen normally slows down bone reabsorption. Without it, bones weaken, raising the risk of fractures. Heart disease is also a concern. Estrogen protects the cardiovascular system by managing cholesterol and keeping blood vessels flexible. Its absence raises LDL levels and stiffens arteries, increasing the risk of heart attacks and high blood pressure. Hypothyroidism is commonly seen alongside autoimmune POI. Estrogen helps regulate immune function, and without it, the thyroid can become a target, leading to slow metabolism, fatigue, and weight gain. Finally, anxiety and depression are frequently in POI. Estrogen loss disrupts the balance of mood regulating chemicals, contributing to emotional instability and mental health struggles. Moving on to the hormonal and reproductive impact from primary ovarian insufficiency. Estrogen plays a critical role in maintaining the uterine lining, supporting bone metabolism, and protecting cardiovascular health. When estrogen levels drop, the uterine lining no longer thickens properly, which interferes with the menstrual cycle and makes it difficult for pregnancy to occur. In the bones, estrogen normally keeps breakdown in check, and without it, bone reabsorption increases, putting the individual at risk for osteoporosis. And when it comes to the heart, estrogen usually helps maintain flexible arteries and healthy cortisol levels, so its absence can increase cardiovascular risk over time. In addition to that, there's a clear hormonal imbalance that develops. If we look at figure 1, the left side shows a healthy ovarian reserve. You can see that the hypothalamus releases GnRH, which signals the pituitary to release FSH and LH. These hormones stimulate the ovaries to produce estradiol and inhibins. This creates a feedback loop that keeps everything in balance. But on the right side, in the case of POI, the ovarian reserve is greatly diminished. The brain continues sending signals, FSH and LH levels stay high, but the ovaries don't respond the way they should. This results in persistent hormonal stimulation without a proper ovarian response, disrupting the entire hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. That's why hormone levels are so off balance in people with POI. This hormonal failures also leads to infertility, which is one of the most difficult consequences of POI. The ovaries are no longer releasing eggs consistently, a condition known as anovulation, and as a result, no more conception becomes very unlikely. Finally, in autoimmune cases, thyroid function is often impacted, especially when TPO antibodies are present. This can cause hyperthyroidism, leading to symptoms like fatigue and weight gain. And as we've seen earlier, estrogen loss also affects body ability to regulate stress through the HPA axis, which can result in cortisol imbalance, contributing to mood swings, anxiety, and low energy. I am now going to move on to the endocrine control, including the non-reproductive hormones. POI is commonly linked with Hashimoto's thyroids, an autoimmune disorder where the body's immune system attacks its own thyroid issue. In people with POI, this autoimmune condition can disrupt thyroid hormone production, leading to hypothyroidism, a condition where the thyroid produces little too much of the hormones T3 and T4. Figure 1 illustrates the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis, which is the hormonal feedback loop controlling thyroid function. It starts in the hypothalamus, located in the brain, which releases TRH. TRH travels to the anterior pituitary gland where it stimulates the release of TSH. TSH then circulates to the thyroid gland located on the base of the neck, promoting it to release T3 and T4. These thyroid hormones impact nearly every cell in the body, influencing metabolism, body temperature, heart rate, and even menstrual function. In a healthy system, T3 and T4 also produce negative feedback to the hypothalamus and pituitary to keep the loop in balance. However, in POI, especially in individuals with autoimmune involvement like Hashimoto's, this loop is disrupted. Estrogen plays a role in supporting thyroid function and immune regulation. So, when estrogen is lost in POI, it may worsen autoimmune activity against the thyroid, lowering T3 and T4 output. As a result, TSH levels rise because the brain is still trying to stimulate a thyroid that isn't responding properly. This hormonal imbalance explains the symptoms seen in patients, like fatigue, which occurs because low thyroid hormone slows metabolic activity in tissues. Second one is weight gain. Weight gain is due to lower basal metabolic rate. Another one is cold intolerance, which happens because T3 and T4 help regulate body temperature. And in worsened menstrual regulation results from disrupted communication between the thyroid and reproductive hormone pathways, especially because both symptoms are interlinked through the hypothalamus. As seen in the figure, thyroid hormones also influence the uterus, ovaries, and even the placenta. When the thyroid function is impaired, it adds another layer of dysfunction on top of the hormonal imbalance already caused by POI. Moving on to cortisol and stress response. Cortisol is our body's main stress hormone, and it's regulated by a system called the HPA axis, which stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This axis connects three major structures: the hypothalamus, pituitary glands in the brain, and the adrenal glands, which sits up just above the kidney. When we experience stress, whether it's emotional, physical, environmental, the hypothalamus releases CRH. CRH signals the pituitary to secrete ACTH, which then stimulates the adrenal glands to release cortisol into the bloodstream. Cortisol helps us respond to stress by increasing glucose activity, regulating the inflammation and influencing energy levels. Now, in PY, estrogen deficiency significantly impacts the system. Est- Estrogen usually plays a balanced role in the HPA axis. It modulates the stress response, keeping it from becoming overreactive. But when estrogen levels drop, the brain becomes more sensitive to stress signals. This causes the HPA axis to become hyperactive, releasing more cortisol than needed or responding too strongly to minor stressors. Looking at the figure 2, we can see how different stressors, environmental, emotional, and physical, trigger HPA axis activation. On the brain side, this leads to a reduction in GnRH production, which lowers FSH and LH levels. That further disrupts the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, which we already know is center of POI. On the reproductive side, stress induced cortisol changes result in poor oocyte development, altered uterine gene expression, reduced implantation potentials, and even changes in follicular fluid composition, all of which make conception much more difficult. Additionally, POI can occur alongside autoimmune adrenal conditions like Addison disease, where the adrenal glands can't produce enough cortisol. This dual dysfunction, both from autoimmune causes and estrogen loss, lead to major hormonal instability. The result of all of this is a set of symptoms like mood swings and anxieties, which come from excess cortisol and disrupted neurotransmitters activity in the brain. Lower energy and chronic fatigue happens because the adrenal glands either overproduce or underproduce cortisol, exhausting the system. And the general hormonal imbalance contributes to worsening emotional regulation and stress tolerance. Lastly, moving on to calcium and parathyroid hormone. Estrogen plays a protective role in bone physiology. It inhibits the activity of osteoclasts, the cells responsible for bone reabsorption, meaning it slows down how quickly bone is broken and recycled. In people with POI, where estrogen levels are significantly reduced, this protective mechanism is lost. When estrogen drops, bone reabsorption increases, which lowers the amount of calcium available in the bloodstream. In response, the parathyroid gland, four glands located behind the thyroid, secrete more parathyroid hormone to try to bring calcium levels back up. Looking at figure 3, it maps out this calcium and phosphate regulation loop. When calcium levels in the extracellular fluid drop, the parathyroid glands release PTH. This hormone acts on three main targets: bones. PTH stimulates bone reabsorption, releasing stored calcium and phosphate into the bloodstream. Second is kidneys. PTH reduces phosphate reabsorption and increases calcium reabsorption, helping prevent calcium from being lost in urine. Lastly, number 3, vitamin D activation. PTA triggers the conversion of vitamin D into its active form, which helps increase calcium absorption from the intestines. All of this works together to restore blood calcium levels. However, in the context of low estrogen, this composition creates a cycle of accelerated bone loss. Estrogen isn't there to help bone reabsorption in check, so even though PTH is trying to balance calcium, it does it at the expense of bone density. This leads to the observable effects of early onset osteopenia or osteoporosis, where bones become fragile much earlier than expected for age. And another one is increased risk of fractures, especially in the spines, hips, and wrists.
And now I want to shed light on the often overlooked relationship between exercise physiology and POI. While POI is primarily understood as a reproductive disorder, it has a lot of systematic consequences, especially for bone health and physical performance, which makes POI not only a crucial topic for reproductive medicine, but for exercise science as well. Estrogen plays a very important role in skeletal health. Under normal condition, estrogen supports bone formation by stimulating osteoblasts activity and limiting bone reabsorption by suppressing osteoclasts. In other words, it helps keep a healthy balance between building and breaking down bone. But in POI, estrogen levels decrease dramatically, sometimes even lower than those seen in menopause. This hormonal decrease leads to accelerated bone loss, reduced bone mineral density, and an increased vulnerability to osteoporosis, fractures, and osteopenia. And this isn't just a long term risk, it has immediate consequences for anyone who relies on a physical performance. The loss of bone density weakens the structural integrity of the skeleton. That's the hips, the spine, and wrists become particularly more prone to stress fractures. It's very important to realize that many women with POI are young and otherwise healthy. They may be active, play sports, or lift weights, but without estrogen, the mechanical loading from exercise no longer stimulates the same level of bone growth. Instead of building stronger bones, physical activity, especially high impact workouts, can increase a fracture risk. Estrogen also plays a very important role in helping preserve muscle mass and strength. Its deficiency can lead to reduced muscle tone and endurance. Estrogen receptors are also found on myocytes, which are muscle cells, where estrogen influences the muscle metabolism and repair, which is why POI can cause fatigue and slower recovery rate after workouts and even decrease in athletic performance over time. Estrogen effects are all deeper at the molecular level. Estrogen binds to receptors in the bone forming cells and trigger pathways, such as the WNT, beta catenin, and the BMP signaling, which are very important for osteoblast differentiation and bone growth. It also increases the expression of osteoprogesterone, also known as OPG, which inhibits the RANKL, a factor that promotes bone breakdown by osteoclasts. In estrogen deficiency, as seen in POI, this balance is disrupted. Inflammatory cytokines such as IL 1, IL 6, and TNF alpha increase. Osteoclast activity increases and bone formation slows down. The result is not only weakened bone structure, but it's also the loss of beneficial response exercise normally has on the musculoskeletal system. Estrogen levels and oxidative stress also has been proven to have a direct link. So, in a normal state, estrogen helps protect tissues, including bone and muscle, from any damage. But in POI, the increase in oxidative stress can interfere with muscle regeneration and bone formation, which increases a compounding effect. One that puts physically active women at much higher risk for injury, fatigue, and long-term skeletal issues. But the good news is that treatment helps. Hormone replacement therapy, also known as HRT, has been shown to restore some of this physiological balance. A study supported by the NIH found that HRT in young women with POI increased their bone mineral density, restoring it to normal levels. The researchers used bone scans of a hip and spine to compare two groups receiving estradiol and progesterone, with and without testosterone. Both hormone replacement regimens improved bone density at the level of women with normal ovarian function, demonstrating how essential estrogen is for the skeletal health. Estrogen replacement reactivates the signaling pathway that exercise depends on, meaning physical activity can once again help build bone and muscle rather than contribute to the breakdown POI causes. When paired with weight bearing exercise, calcium, vitamin D, and healthy lifestyle practices, hormone replacement therapy can bring a lot of benefits to women who regularly exercise with POI or just simply women with POI. But all in all, POI drastically alters the physiology of bone and muscle, undermining many benefits that exercise might provide, which is why it's not enough just to encourage movement. We have to understand the hormonal context behind it. Diagnosing POI isn't always straightforward, especially because its symptoms can overlap with so many other conditions. The most obvious sign is a change in menstrual cycles. If a woman under 40 suddenly begins skipping periods or experiencing irregular cycles for more than 4 months, that is a major red flag. But on its own, it's not enough to confirm POI. It just means healthcare professionals would have to take a closer look. The first thing most doctors will do is a pregnancy test, and that is because pregnancy is by far the most common reason for missed periods in women of reproductive age. It has to be ruled out before looking at any other causes. Next, a physical exam and a review of the patient's medical and family history. But why? POI is often linked to other conditions, especially autoimmune diseases. For example, Addison's disease, which affects the adrenal glands. It is known to co-occur with POI. If a woman shows symptoms like fatigue, low blood pressure, or skin changes, that might affect the point towards an autoimmune cause and can make POI more likely. Similarly, a personal or a family history of ovarian surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation therapy is relevant because these treatments can directly damage ovarian tissue and can cause early failure. Healthcare professionals also ask about genetic conditions like Fragile X syndrome because POI can run in families or be linked to inherited mutations. Then we move on to hormonal testing, which is really a centerpiece for the diagnostic process. One of the key hormones checked is FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. Under normal condition, the brain releases FSH to stimulate the ovaries to grow follicles and produce estrogen. But in POI, the ovaries stop responding. So the brain sends even more FSH to jumpstart them, and that's why FSH levels become abnormally high. To confirm POI, providers look for constantly elevated FSH levels on two separate tests at least a month apart. This helps rule out any temporary hormone fluctuations. Estradiol, which is a form of estrogen, is also tested. In women with POI, estrogen production drops significantly, which is why estradiol levels tend to be very low. LH, or luteinizing hormone, is also high as well, and this further supports the idea that the brain is trying to get the ovaries to ovulate, but the ovaries are not cooperating. Another useful test is AMH, anti-Mullerian hormone. This hormone reflects the number of growing follicles a woman has. If AMH is very low, it means that there's little to no ovarian reserve left, which is the defining characteristic of POI. What makes AMH really helpful is that it can start to decline years before complete ovarian failure occurs, which makes it really useful in early detection. Healthcare providers will also order a transvaginal ultrasound, which allows them to directly visualize the ovaries. In POI, the ovaries often appear smaller than normal and have few or no follicles visible, which supports the hormone findings. If the ovaries look inactive on the ultrasound and the hormone levels are off, POI becomes a much more likely diagnosis. Genetic testing is also important in younger women or those with developmental delays. Karyotype tests can also identify chromosomal abnormalities like Turner syndrome, which can lead to early ovarian failure. Testing for Fragile X premutations is also very important as the carriers may have increased risk for POI. Genetic counseling is also recommended, especially for women under 40 with a family history of early menopause. Last but not least, it's important to understand that POI is a diagnosis of exclusion. That means doctors must rule out more common causes of irregular periods like PCOS, thyroid dysfunction, hyperprolactinemia, or hypothalamic amenorrhea due to extreme stress, eating disorders, or low body weight. Each of these can disrupt menstruation without involving actual ovarian failure, which is why this process requires multiple steps to ensuring nothing is overlooked. And perhaps most importantly, early diagnosis really matters. If POI goes undiagnosed, the patient could miss a window to preserve her fertility or delay hormone therapy that protects the overall health. Sadly, missed periods in young women are often brushed off as stress related, but assuming without proper testing can delay care. With timely diagnosis, women with POI can become connected to fertility options, hormone replacement therapy, and psychological support to manage the impact of the condition and quality of life.
Next, we are moving on to treatment. Number 1 is hormone replacement therapy. It is designed to replace estrogen and other hormones that the ovaries are no longer able to produce. Because estrogen plays a vital role throughout the body, HRT doesn't just target reproductive symptoms, it also protects major physiological symptoms like the cardiovascular, skeletal, and endocrine system. Looking at figure 1, we can see how HRT influences systematic hormone balance. The image shows a connection between the gut microbiome and hormone regulation, specifically highlighting how hormone replacement can help reduce harmful circulation, metabolites, and inflammation, such as TGF-bI1, which is linked to ovarian fibrosis. By improving the hormonal environment, HRT not only helps restore some ovarian function, it also reduces the risk of tissue damage and metabolic dysfunction associated with POI. HRT is typically a combination of estradiol, the nature form of estrogen, and progestin, a form of progesterone. These hormones can give through patches, vaginal rings, or pills, and transdermal options like skin patches or vaginal rings are often preferred because they carry a low risk of blood clots. For someone with POI, starting HRT can result in return of regulatory menstrual cycles, improvement in sexual health, and reduction in symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, and mood swings. It also helps improve bone density, reducing the risk of osteoporosis and fractures, and supports heart health by improving cholesterol levels, increasing ADH, and lowering LDL. But HRT also benefits for people with other hormone-related conditions. In osteoporosis, HRT helps by slowing down bone breakdown and supporting bone formation, lowering the chances of fractures. This is especially important for women with POI since estrogen loss happens earlier and faster than in normal menopause. In Addison's disease, which affects adrenal hormone production, HRT can help reduce overall endocrine stress. Estrogen supports the HPA axis, helping to modulate stress response and balance cortisol levels, which are often deficient in Addison's patients. For hypothyroidism or autoimmune thyroid disease, HRT may indirectly help by improving immune regulation and reducing inflammation, as estrogen plays a role in modulating immune sensitivity. Patients often see improvements in fatigue, mood, and even metabolic symptoms when hormonal balance is restored. Mostly important, HRT improves overall quality of life for individuals with POI by restoring the physiological stability that estrogen once maintained. Hormone replacement therapy may improve fertility potentials by lowering high LH levels and helping the body regulate ovulation more efficiently. However, HRT must be managed carefully. Progesterone is added to prevent the estrogen from stimulating the endometrial lining, which could increase the risk of endometrial cancer. And while studies show no increased breast cancer risk in women under 50, the treatment is usually discontinued around natural menopause age unless otherwise advised by a healthcare provider. Now moving on to Vicryl activation. It works by targeting premortal follicles, which are small, dormant egg cells still present in the ovaries of many women with POI. Although these follicles are inactive, they are not entirely lost. And IVA is designed to give them the push they need to begin growing again. As shown in Figure 2, follicle development begins with premortal follicles, which, under the right condition, can develop with mature prevoluntary follicles. In POI, however, this process is halted early on. To reactivate the process, IVA follows several key steps, such as ovarian tissues is surgically removed, typically from the lower ovary, through a laparoscopy. Number two, the outer layer of the ovary, called the cortex, which contains most of the dormant follicles, is dissected and cut into smaller tissue cubes. Number three, these tissue cubes are placed in laboratory medium containing growth activation chemicals, including P10 inhibitor and PI3K activator, which stimulates the PI3K AKT signaling pathway, a pathway known to promote follicle growth. Number four, after 2 days of an in vitro incubation, the activation tissue is reimplanted beneath the serosa of the fallopian tubes using a special applicator. This approach encourages the dormant follicles to begin developing, as shown in Figure 2, moving from premortal to primary, preancial, ancial, and eventually prevoltary stage. In successful cases, this can lead to ovulation and egg retrieval using the patient's own genetic material. While IVF is focused on restoring fertility, it can also support other systems that is disrupted by POI, like in Addison disease. Adrenal hormone production is impaired. Reinactivation ovarian function can help balance hormonal signaling with the hypothalamic pituitary oval adrenal network, reducing the pressure of adrenal pathways and supporting hormonal stability. In thyroid disorders, especially hypothyroidism, estrogen loss can worsen thyroid hormone imbalance by encouraging the ovaries to resume hormone production. IVA may indirectly improve symptoms like fatigue, mood swings, and metabolic slowdown, all of which overlap with POI and thyroid dysfunction. In cases of osteoporosis, estrogen plays a key role in protecting bones. If IVF leads to restored estrogen production, it could help slow down bone reabsorption, improving bone density and reducing fracture risk. IVA may help reduce symptoms such as irregular absent periods, infertility, hot flashes and night sweats, fatigue and low energy, weak bones, and early bone loss. Moving on to the third treatment, mitochondria are often called the powerhouse of the cell. They are responsible for producing ATP, the energy that every cell needs to function, grow, and divide. Mitochondria also helps regulate calcium levels, oxidative stress, and apoptosis, which all play a role in maintaining healthy oocytes. In Figure 3, we can see the process of mitochondrial transfer. In this approach, healthy mitochondria are taken from a donor or from the patient's own original stem cell and then injected into the patient's oocytes. This transfer gives the eggs a fresh source of energy and helps restore proper cellular function. There are three ways to do this. Number one is the spinal transfer, which involves removing the nuclear material from a patient's eggs and inserting it into a donor egg that has all its nucleus removed but still contains healthy mitochondria. Number two is the germal vesicle transfer and prenuclear transfer are other options, each with their own technique and ethical challenge. Number three is the augment technique. Now, under further review, uses mitochondria from the patient's own stem cell to avoid risk of rejection or disease transmission. Now, in mitochondria, transfers may improve egg quality, embryo development, fertilization success, and ultimately the chance of pregnancy using the woman's own genetic material. Mitochondria also benefits conditions like Addison's disease, where adrenal glands are failing and energy is low. Supporting mitochondrial health may help reduce chronic fatigue and hormone instability at the cellular level. In hypothyroidism, which slows metabolism, improved mitochondrial function, which could help restore energy regulation, combat cold intolerance, and ease mental fatigue. Common symptoms shared with POI. For osteoporosis, while this therapy does not directly target bone health, it improves cellular health and energy metabolism, which may indirectly benefit bone building cells, especially if the egg and hormone production are restored. While mitochondrial transfer shows promise, research is still going on. Some methods like spinal transfer have resulted in live births, including one of a woman with Leah syndrome, a mitochondrial disease. But other approaches like augment have shown mixed results and ethical concerns around heterotoplasmy. Moving on to the third treatment, platelet-rich plasma. It is based on using the patient's own blood to stimulate tissue regeneration in the ovaries. As shown in Figure 4, blood is drawn from the arm and then processed using a centrifuge, which spins the sample to separate and concentrate the platelets. These platelets are rich in growth factors, hormones, and healing proteins stored in structures called granules. The concentration PRP is then injected directly into the ovaries. Once inside the ovaries, PRP releases bioactive signals that support cellular repair, follicle activations, angiogenesis, the formation of new blood vessels, and lastly, reduction of oxidative stress and inflammation. These changes improve the ovarian microenvironment, allowing dormant and underdeveloped follicles to begin growing and potentially mature. One specific factor found in PRP is GDF9, is essential for follicle development and is often lacking or muted in POI. Its presence may help stimulate premortal and primary follicles to progress towards maturity. PRP also appears to restore hormonal balance. Studies suggest that after PRP therapy, levels of anti-Mullerian hormone, which reflects the number of developing follicles, may increase while FSH and LH levels may normalize. These changes suggest a return of ovarian responsiveness, which is crucial for women with POI preparing for IVF or natural conception. Because PRP promotes tissue rejuvenation and cell signaling, it may also help with symptoms and dysfunction in other endocrine related functions, such as for Addison's disease, where adrenal hormone and production is impaired. The growth factors in PRP may assist in cellular repair and restore hormonal communications across symptoms, reducing fatigue and hormonal instability. In thyroid disease and hypothyroidism, the enhanced vascularization and cell repair from PRP could support overall metabolic balance and energy levels, helping with symptoms like licorty, menstrual irregularities, and slowed follicle growth. For osteoporosis, PRP regenerates effects may directly help by supporting hormonal balance and improving the ovarian estrogen production, which is crucial for bone density preservation in women with POI. Clinically, platelet-rich plasma has been explored in women undergoing fertility treatment such as IVF and has shown potential to restore ovarian function and improving egg quality. Platelet-rich plasma may offer new hope for individuals with diminished ovarian reserve or premenopausal symptoms who still wish to conceive using their own eggs. While further research is still needed, platelet-rich plasma is considered promising because it uses the patient's own biological material, reducing the risk of immune rejection. However, the risks include potential infection and activation of unintended growth cells. Lastly, we are looking at stem cell therapy. Stem cell therapy focuses on repairing and regenerating ovarian tissues that have been damaged or has stopped functioning due to POI. Stem cells are undifferentiated cells, meaning they have yet to become a special type of cell, but they still have the power to self-renew and develop into specialized cells when they are given the right signals. Different types of stem cells can be used in research, but the most common and safest for treating POI is MSC. These are collected from various sources like bone marrow, adipose tissue, placenta, umbilical cord, or even menstrual blood. Looking at figure 5, we can see multiple pathways through which stem cells help restore ovarian health. Number 1 is homing. Stem cells naturally move towards areas of injury like damaged ovarian tissues. Number 2 is differentiation. They may transform into ovarian cells, including germ cells or support cells. Number 3 is the paraserian signaling. This is where much of the healing happens. Stem cells release biologically active molecules such as growth factors, anti-inflammatory agents, and antioxidants. These signal prevent further cell death, reduce scar tissue, increase blood supply, and modulate the immune system. Number 4 is exosomes, small vessels released by stem cells that carry proteins and RNA, helping coordinate repair and communicate between cells. And lastly is mitochondrial transfer. Some cells can donate healthy mitochondria to the oocytes, improving their energy levels and development potential. All of these work together to rebuild ovarian structures, restore hormone production, and support follicle development. When combined with biomaterials like collagen, allogenate, and hyaluronic acid, the survival and target of stem cells can improve even further. Because of its broad regenerative effects, stem cell therapy may also help with immune conditions as seen or connected to POI. Number 1 is Addison's disease, which involves adrenal insufficiency and chronic inflammation. The anti-inflammatory and immune modulating properties of stem cell may help support better hormone balance and reduce fatigue. In thyroid disease or hypothyroidism, stem cells can help counter systemic inflammatory and tissue damage. Improved ovarian hormone production may relieve symptoms like brain fog, irregular periods, and cold tolerance. Lastly, for osteoporosis, stem cell therapy may indirectly support bone health by restoring estrogen levels, which is essential for maintaining bone density. Additionally, stem cells support angiogenesis and tissue regeneration, which benefit overall metabolic balance. Through its through its many mechanisms, stem cell therapy has the potential to improve irregular or absent menstrual cycles, infertility caused by poor follicle development, low estrogen related symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats, and lastly, fatigue and hormonal imbalance.
Primary ovarian insufficiency causes the ovaries to stop working before the age of 40, leading to a sharp drop in estrogen. Since this hormone helps protect multiple body systems, the absence can cause a range of long term health issues. Fertility is impacted, with very low chances of natural pregnancy. Low estrogen also weakens the bones over time, raising the risk of osteoporosis and fractures. The heart is affected too. Estrogen normally supports healthy cholesterol levels and blood vessels, so without it, the risk of heart disease increases. Some women may experience memory problems and a higher risk of cognitive decline, especially with sudden menopause. Emotionally, POI can lead to distress, anxiety, and sexual dysfunction. But it's important to remember, even with these risks, women with POI can still live healthy, full lives. With an early diagnosis, hormone therapy, lifestyle changes, and emotional support, many of these complications can be prevented or managed effectively.
In conclusion, premature ovarian insufficiency is a complex condition that extends beyond fertility, affecting hormonal balance, bone density, cardiovascular health, and emotional well being. Understanding its causes, symptoms, and health risk is crucial for early diagnosis and effective management. While POI presents many challenges, treatments like hormonal replacement therapy, life changes, and fertility options offer hope for maintaining quality of life. With continued research and awareness, we can improve support and expand future treatment possibilities for those affected by POI. The following slides are going to contain our references from both me and Natalia, where we got our information from for our presentation. Now, this is our presentation for premature ovarian insufficiency. Hope you liked it. Goodbye.